Imagine being stranded in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. No compass, no map, no motor. Just you pitching violently on a massive swell of black, freezing water. In every direction, the horizon is a flat, terrifying line of blue. If you were dropped into this scenario today, your modern brain would instantly panic. You would be dead in a matter of days. You belong on the land. We think of deep ocean navigation as a modern miracle. We picture massive wooden galleons, the age of discovery, and explorers with brass telescopes. We assume that before the invention of the wheel, early humans were stuck on land terrified of the deep water, staring at the waves from the absolute safety of the beach. But the archaeological record tells a completely different, almost impossible story. Long before the pyramids, long before the invention of agriculture, long before we even had the word for ship, your ancient ancestors were looking at the ocean and deciding to cross it. And they didn't just drift by accident. They navigated. To understand how crazy this is, we have to look at an invisible biological wall in the ocean called the Wallace Line. It runs deep through the waters of modern-day Indonesia. During the last ice age, sea levels dropped drastically, turning shallow waters into massive land bridges. But the Wallace Line is a deep-sea trench. Even when the oceans were at their absolute lowest, there was still a gap of at least 50 miles of open, raging, treacherous sea. No land bridge, no shallow wading. To get across it, you had to cross the abyss. Animals did not cross it. Asian rhinos, tigers, and elephants stayed on one side. Australian marsupials stayed on the other. For millions of years, that 50-mile stretch of water was an absolute, unbreakable biological barrier. But roughly 65,000 years ago, something finally broke the rule. Us. Scientists have found human remains and tools in Australia dating back tens of thousands of years. But here is the glaring problem. Humans evolved in Africa. To get to Australia, they had to cross the Wallace Line. And remember, 65,000 years ago, we were still deep in the Stone Age. We didn't have sails, we didn't have metal tools, and we had no maps. So how did they do it? For a long time, historians assumed they just got lucky. The prevailing theory was that a group of ancient humans got swept out to sea on a fallen tree during a massive tsunami and accidentally washed up on a new continent. But modern computer simulations have completely destroyed that theory. To successfully populate a landmass the size of Australia, you need what biologists call a minimum viable population. You cannot start a civilization with 2 starving, dehydrated survivors clinging to a log. You need dozens, maybe hundreds of healthy people, arriving simultaneously or in planned, successive waves. This wasn't a freak accident. This was a deliberate, coordinated fleet. Using nothing but stone axes and fire, ancient humans hollowed out massive tree trunks. They bound together giant bundles of bamboo using vines and natural fibers to create massive, unsinkable rafts. But building a vessel is only half the problem. How do you know where you are going when the land completely disappears behind you? Ancient humans didn't navigate by looking at instruments. They navigated by reading the planet. They became the greatest ocean readers in the history of the Earth. They read the stars, memorizing the slow, mathematical rotation of the night sky to hold a perfectly straight line in the pitch black. They read the flight paths of birds, knowing that certain species always fly toward land at sunset. They read the clouds, recognizing that a cloud sitting entirely still over the open ocean is actually reflecting the green color of a hidden jungle canopy just over the horizon. Ancient navigators could dip their hands into the sea and feel the subtle temperature changes of different underwater currents. They could feel the specific bounce of a wave rolling backward off an invisible landmass hundreds of miles away. They literally felt their way across the ocean. We look back at these ancient people and think of them as primitive. We picture simple cavemen just trying to survive day to day. But 65,000 years ago, a group of humans stood on a beach, looked out at a terrifying expanse of water where the land completely disappeared. And instead of walking away, they built a raft and stepped into the void. Why? There were plenty of animals to hunt right where they were. There were plenty of fruits to gather. They were safe. They did not need to risk their lives crossing the abyss. But they did it anyway. Because built into the very foundation of human DNA is an irrational, uncontrollable urge to know what is over the horizon. Every other animal on this planet looks at the edge of the world and stops. Humans look at the edge of the world and build a boat. You still have that exact same programming inside you right now. When you feel that restless, nagging urge to quit your safe job, to move to a new city, or to start completely over when everything in your life is perfectly fine, that is not a modern midlife crisis. That is the ghost of an ancient navigator waking up inside your brain. Your body is remembering the beach, it is remembering the stars, and it is reminding you that the only way to find out what you are truly capable of is to leave the safety of the shore.